Hello and welcome to the Tim Talks Theatre podcast, Fringe series. In this series, I'm going to be talking to various casts and creatives about their upcoming trip to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Enjoy.
Thank you. So what's the best way to structure this for your benefit?
So I've got some questions. I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we can chat about it and stuff like that.
Of course.
So would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Mischa Alexander. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a freelance producer working with a company called Women X Arts. I graduated last year from the Royal Social School of Speech and Drama with an MA in creative producing, and I've done a variety of work with companies such as Dilated Theatre Production, Deadway Theatre, and I've worked with venues including the Pleasance Theatre, Soho Theatre, and the Omnibus.
Cool. And so some of these questions that I'm going to ask are just some of them a bit random. So I was looking at what to ask last night. So
Of course.
would you be able to tell us two truths and one lie about yourself? There's something a bit
Two,
different.
ooh,
So
yeah. Yes, of course. Two truths and lie. Okay. I've spent 6 months working in a cocktail bar in Mayfair. I've hiked in countries such as Scotland and Spain semi-professionally, and I am an avid chess player.
cool. And would you be able to describe your new show in 23 words? I know that sounds like a random number. I thought
23 words. Okay, I will do my best. Just give me a minute of phrasing. Okay. Um, this show is part outcry, part spoken word, and explores the impact of street harassment, public safety, and the act of reclaiming one's power.
perfect. That sounds really interesting. Unfortunately, I'm not in Edinburgh this year. I'm really busy with quite a few things, so it's a shame I can't go. Hopefully next
Well, we
year
also
though.
have previews in London, if that helps.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah. So do you want me to talk a bit more about the show outside of 23 words, or what's best for you?
Well, the next sort of question is, uh, what are your plans for like ticket sales, flyering, social media, and stuff like that? It's
So our primary goal is to reach out to organizations and charities that do a lot of work engaging with helping people who have suffered from street harassment and other forms of sexual abuse or harassment. For instance, we're working with Stop Hate UK to promote our preview of the Omnibus Theatre at the end of the month. Uh, and we are doing this because we want to be able to raise awareness of both the resources and information done provided by these charities in order to best showcase what the issue and make people understand the relevancy of engaging with this source material. Outside of this, at the moment we're going to have like a very forward flyering campaign to begin with, whilst the majority of our team members are after that up at the venue in order to try and build up a good sort of like word of mouth. And then we're going to be focusing on targeted social media a bit later, as I would just be our main performer and writer up there, and just in order to cover a bit more ground, so to speak. We're also engaging in a lot with a lot of other companies, doing cross promotion and encouraging people to check out different work. And we're starting a new initiative soon where we're trying to work with the Fringe in order to promote the working class artists and help them promote their show, showcase their work in a environment such as the Fringe, where so much money can go towards just simple things like accommodation, transport, and not leave a lot of other room for like marketing promotion, especially when you're up against companies and venues that can put a lot of money into things like hiring flyers directly or paying huge amounts for social media attention. And big names will automatically draw in big reviewers. So our aim is to promote the sort of smaller shows that are no less good, that have just as much quality and just as much to say, but just because of circumstances around their creation, don't get as much of an opportunity to be showcased.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard because it costs so much money for shows wherever they are to be put on. Like it just is. It's not. Some people think, oh, it's really, really cheap, and it's not though. You've got so much to factor in, like all everything. It's just, it's great. It sounds really good what you're doing.
Exactly, and we want to and as a result of that, the more marginalized voices, the people without the resources and without that same experience, or who are just starting out, who are wanting to enter into the industry and the fringe theatre landscape, have the odds stacked against them from the minute they want to step in the door. And I think that those are the sort of voices that we do need to promote. We do need to make sure that there are means, opportunities for these voices to still attend the fringe and not just go into huge amounts of emotional burden and financial debt. I know initiatives have started this year, for instance, earlier this year with the 50 grants of £2,000 being made available for various artists. But at the same time, considering the amount of people going up there and considering that £2,000 for Edinburgh, that will cover maybe most of your accommodation, insurance, and a couple of train tickets. It's not going to offset the huge amount of costs from going up there. So I do think, even if it's not just about handing the money, although there's definitely a part for that, having initiatives where there are chances for newer creatives that don't have a huge amount of resources to be able to have a bit of extra help along with some promotional material, some work directly with the Fringe. I think that would be a very good initiative to take forth, and it's what we're pushing, and we're hoping to work with the Fringe directly to create something like this.
That sounds really, really good. Yeah. Um, if I go into my next question, we can go back to this. That's fine. I do have to say I am block booked for the next hour, but that's not a problem.
Of course.
What will you miss most from? I'll rephrase that. What will you miss most while you're away from home?
A healthy sleep schedule. No, I think going up to the Fringe is a fantastic experience, but it can definitely be a sort of echo chamber of experience. I think it's for a month where you kind of have to say goodbye to hobbies, for like routines that aren't built around this, and it becomes your own special world for a bit. So just being able to pace yourself a bit more, and I say I'm really gonna yeah miss the chance to just see and do things that aren't really in a theatre context. Because when you're up there, there's so much to do and so much you want to go and see, even if you're there for a limited time. Doing anything but going to a show kind of
Yeah.
feels wasteful. So there's definitely that, but I'd say it's definitely a trade-off worth making.
It's like it sort of feels like it's going to be like a year's worth of time crammed into a month, sort of thing. It just
Absolutely. I mean, it becomes its own like world, and you can barely think about anything else. But at the same time, as a result of like, there's so much within that, so many different companies you can meet, so many different creators who come from all over the world. To be honest, like I've made friends in like countries from the other side of the world just from like having a chat with them outside of a show we were both curious to go see. And I think it can be a fantastic experience for that.
it sounds like the community is absolutely great. That I
Oh yeah,
think that
the people are absolutely. I always think that one of the best parts of the Fringe when I've worked up there has just been chatting to company members after their show, forming those sort of connections with the different actors, writers, producers, even if it's not on a personal level, just being able to remember that there are other people that are supporting you. It isn't just a faceless massive show. There are people behind there who want to engage with you, who want to talk to you, and I think that's really nice.
it does really sound amazing. So when you're up in Edinburgh, what is there anything that you're looking forward to seeing or doing that doesn't necessarily revolve around like theatre?
By that do you mean theatre as in the Fringe acts in general, or more focusing on things more like comedy, more music, things like that, or
No,
it's
if
outside the Fringe at all?
well, either outside of the three, for that I can't speak. Outside of the fringe, so to speak, or
I mean, I think Edinburgh is a beautiful city. I think I love the chance when I'm up there to go outside of just the central fringe area, go down to the bay, for instance, and get in more of like the new town, taking the history. I think everyone, it feels like a weird thing to recommend, but if you can, I think Arthur Seat is worth definitely walking up. But yes, there are all the midges that are going to drive same, but it is such a beautiful view. Yeah, I think the history there is such a lovely chance, and if you are able to if you're up in Scotland anyway, going out and visiting places like the Highlands or Glasgow and getting to travel around and experience how amazing Scotland is just outside of the fringe is just always a worthwhile thing to do.
yeah, that sounds really good. I went to Scotland years ago.
Hello?
I can't really remember it.
Hello?
So
I'm really sorry, I can't quite hear you. The connection being a bit lagging.
is it okay now? What?
Hello?
1 second. Is that better? Hello, hello.
I can hear you slightly better now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I was switching over to my phone's internet. I do apologise.
Okay. I can hear you a little better now, yeah.
So my next question is, if you could take over programming, um, of a venue, what would you put in place like for a venue? Like it could be comedy, could be musicals, could be plays.
Uh, of a specific venue?
Any venue, any like fringe venue you like.
I Hmm. I'd say I'd love to have more explore some of the shows and out put a bit more creativity behind some of the shows at Pleasance. I think it's a fantastic programming team that there's so much and so many great shows going on. What I'd love to see more of that are, as I said, the new like companies and like I'd love to put in place like a minimum quota for like X amount of venues are reserved, X amount of like venue spaces are reserved in order to showcase new work and showcase new talent and give the name and focus of the Pleasance of the Big Four the extra support to these shows that would allow be rather than having established comedians who have already done huge shows and weekend tour and like cross country tours and things like that. I think it can be great to do, and obviously you need the income for it still. But just making sure that there's more of an emphasis on like new scripts, including things like new things like drag artists, spoken words, not just the blend of stand-up comedy and theatre, and just diversifying the sort of like talent pool.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's just like it's all very well like you get well-known people and like well-known shows, but it's also nice to give new theatre a chance to gain traction and gain a following.
Exactly. And you have the big people who sell out the 1,000 seat capacity ones, your Nina Contis, people like that. And that is great, and I'm really happy for them. But I also just want to make sure that there's more of a space carved out and promotional space carved out to provide this extra in-house space for these new workers.
That sounds good. Why should an audience pick your show, like saying the program or when you're flying,
I
over
think it
someone
should
else's?
I think they should pick our show for two main reasons. One, it's a very unique script. It blends mixes of poetry, performance, but then elements of spirituality. And the writer has taken a lot of influence from her own Zimbabwe culture and their belief system there in order to incorporate that into the show. And you get this fantastically blended script of all these different tones that really carries across the character in such a prominent way. But simultaneously, I think I watch it because I think it brings to light and sort of brings to mind a lot of the issues of street harassment that we've seen, increasingly made prominent over the last few years, although they've always been there, of course. But in Edinburgh itself, during the Fringe, there does tend to be like an uptick in these sort of levels of harassment due to the number of people and alcohol that's consumed. And I think this show, if you're someone, for instance, a man who hasn't really thought about it before, or doesn't think it's a big deal, it sort of like showcases the actual problem, makes it clear, like, oh, why it's not just, someone making an off comment, or why it's something that it can just be brushed off. And so it brings it to light, but it's not about wallowing in the tragedy of it. It's about being angry, it's about making a response, and it's about finding strength in yourself, in community, in identity that can allow you to overcome your feelings of fear and give you that power in order to gain your strength back after it's been taken from you in these acts. It also does some great work at exposing how a lot of the institutional support that's supposed to be in place fails to actually prevent the actual cases. I mean, it's at the point where 97% of young women between the age of 18 and 24 are likely to experience street harassment during that time. And if that's the numbers, you basically got a system where it's decriminalized. So I think it puts your anger in the right direction, but I also think it gives you a great sense of hope and joy and pride in yourself.
Yeah, it's just like, what I think is, some people, I will say this really carefully. So some people think they're just, everybody's complaining, like when they use the word Karen or something like that. So it's it is in fact real. It's not people making stuff of it. It's actually a thing that happens.
I I think that the level of disconnect between people is certainly a great motivator in these sort of harassment, where you get people sort of like seeing random people on the street thinking that they're entitled to that space, not really getting a sense of their boundaries or their personal limits and all their personal, privacy. But I also think it's a great deal of to be remembered that a lot of it comes to like power and control. It's about a man. If a man catcalls a young girl, it's not because he thinks she's genuinely going to turn around and be enamored by him. It's because he wants to have that sense of power over her. He wants to have that authority and weight over her. And I think that that's, as a system, is very much built into the structures of our society, and something that should definitely be changed. And I hope this show showcases the fact that the people who do that, they don't really have power. They're just trying to claim it.
That sounds brilliant. Yeah, it's just, some people are just so sort of controlling, and
Mm.
they just, it's sort of in a way, like, just, can you not just be nice and be a nice person? It's not hard. If you don't agree with something, just don't say anything, or you can say something that will be diplomatic and be nice. It's, do you know,
I think people want to claim the weight to their own authority over other people. I think if they think they see something, they think they have the immediate right to just call something out if they think it's funny or they think it's fine, and not really think about the other person as a human who has to enjoy that and has feelings as a result of that. And I think seeing the other person as a human being, as a person with emotional wants, needs, securities, limitations, needs to be given focus before engaging and just trying to make yourself feel better through an arduous comment.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, it all sounds brilliant. Um, so my sort of last question is what are your top tips for surviving the fringe?
Uh, okay. Should we go with three?
Yeah,
No, number one, don't plan everything in advance. I know if you're there, say, for a week, it's easy to just book all your tickets in advance and get everything in itineraries and on your calendar. I think playing things to chance, being open-minded to people, talking to flyers. I know it's easy to brush them off, but I've had some of the most interesting conversations with people when they're promoting their own show, and you get to understand and have that interesting conversation. I think that's great. Number two is pace yourself. You don't need to spend every minute of every day walking between venues and walking between shows. You are allowed to take a break. You're allowed to go do something else. You're allowed to take a bit of time to relax, to not go out for drinks that evening, to just take a morning where you just have breakfast and have that time for yourself. So pace it that way. And my third one, and this is more for like creative workers, for the people bringing shows up there. It's okay that you're making mistakes. It's okay that you'll feel overwhelmed or you're self-doubting or you're at the point where you've had that emotional breakdown and you're just worried about how it reflects on you and your talent and your career. Everyone is feeling like that. Everyone is questioning themselves the whole time. And those mistakes that happen, you will learn from them, you will grow, and it doesn't define you as a work person or as a creative. You've got this.
I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to find more about me, follow me on all social media at Tim Talks Theatre. Visit timtalkstheatre.co.uk/podcast. Or if you want to learn more about the shows I've interviewed, go to timtalkstheatre.co.uk/edfringe. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Don't forget to share it with your friends and family. Thank you.